Hi, Arseny. Let's take a look at this new set of essays. The first one is about pollution. It's a reasons and solution essay. So let's see what you said. Technological and scientific progress provided nearly an unlimited amount of benefits for the modern society. However, all these improvements are coming with various problems that are becoming more and more urgent. Ecological vulnerability and pollution, especially in big urban areas, is one of these problems. This essay will give a short overview on some of this problem's reasons and some ways of finding a right solution to this issue. Okay, this is on the whole a good introduction. There are still some things that I want to change though, okay, just to kind of boost it up a level or so. Let's see, let's read it again and make some changes. Okay, so technological and scientific progress have provided, okay, because we don't know when this happened, have provided a nearly unlimited amount of benefits for the modern society. However, all these improvements come with various problems, or even better, even higher level would be are accompanied by various problems. It sounds a little more academic. That are becoming more and more urgent. Ecological vulnerability and pollution, comma, especially in big urban areas, comma, is one of these problems. This essay will give a short overview on some of this problem's reasons and some ways. How about to find some ways of finding? It just feels a little strange to me, and some way. You know what it is? It's a lot of unnecessary words. You could have just said, and some proper solutions to this issue. That would have been a good way to say this, okay? Also, I'm never a big fan of the word big, even though we use it in spoken language all the time. I mean, I just did. It's not the kind of word you really want to include in an academic essay. One of the reasons is that it's just really, really very elementary. And the second reason is because it's just very imprecise. I mean, big. Big, it doesn't really tell us a lot. So you're doing yourself a disservice by using a word like this. You could say large urban areas, or you could talk about vast metropolises, or yeah, large is actually such a better word than big in the context of an essay. I mean, of course, there are other words you could use as well. Let's see, especially in major urban areas or in metropolitan areas. I mean, you can understand my point that big is probably a word you want to avoid. All right, let's move on. It would be obvious to mention that there are many reasons that may cause vast pollution. All right, careful here. Again, I feel like you've got some words which aren't really serving a purpose other than to just, be there. So let's clean this up, make it more concise and higher level. So you could say something like clearly or certainly, and that's fine. So certainly there are many here reasons that cause. That sounds a little strange to me. You could say factors that may cause vast pollution. I like that you used may here. That's important to do. You don't want to be too absolute anytime you write something like this. So that was good. But let's try it like that. Clearly, there are many factors involved in the creation of pollution. I don't even like vast pollution. You could say widespread. That would have been a better word. Let's see. Clearly, there are many causes behind widespread pollution. Another good way of saying this, okay? One such cause, again, I don't like reason, is that people's demands have risen. Careful with your grammar. So, people started to consume more than we actually need. Increased consumption is causing higher production volumes, which are followed by greater greenhouse gas emissions and a larger numbers of generated garbage. All right, can you tell me why? Maybe it seems very self-explanatory to you. I do think you need to say this, okay? So, how do you connect higher production with greater greenhouse gases? All right, you made a mental leap there, but you can't assume that your reader is following you. You have to really spell out your thought process there, okay? Okay. And a larger number. Careful, garbage is uncountable, so you can't talk about a number of garbage. Instead, you could talk about amounts of garbage, volumes of garbage. I don't know about that. Maybe volumes of garbage is not a great word either. But amount is certainly an appropriate word here. And larger amounts of generated garbage. Yeah. At the same time, widespread urban sprawl is causing longer everyday. Careful too, not travel. The word you really want here is commute. All right, because you're clearly talking about this travel from home to work, and that's called our commute. So that's a much more appropriate word. So widespread urban sprawl is causing longer commutes. For example, all right, now what's the point here? Tell me about this commute, which in turn is causing air pollution, right? Okay? Yes. So, for example, now in a big city, it would be normal to spend more than an hour to reach your workplace. Evidently, longer distances require longer use of public or private transport, and it is undoubtedly followed by a greater CO2 emission and other toxic gases pollution. This is a little awkward to me. Other toxic gases. You could have just said followed by a greater emission of CO2 and other toxic gases. Full stop. These are only two possible reasons. Meanwhile, in real life, there are hundreds of them. Okay, I understand that, although I don't advise writing this here because the examiner might say, okay, well, if you're not going to talk about them, then why mention them? Okay? We pretty much really just want to talk about the things that we're going to talk about and not mention that, there could be thousands of reasons. What you could have said here instead, if you're trying to wrap up this paragraph, which is always a good idea, you could have said, these are only two of the, well, you don't even say these are only two. So you could have said these are among the reasons involved, not reasons, these are among the causes of pollution. Okay? All right, so let's move on. No doubt, if there are many reasons for the pollution, there would be at least a couple of possible solutions to that. One of the most powerful tools to overcome this and several other problems is the development of social responsibility. This approach requires us to question our demands, and when any decision is taken, it should be taken with full understanding of its consequences. For example, it was researched that some people buy much more groceries than they can actually eat. This leads to the situation. How about this? This leads to a situation where the expiration date comes before we actually eat that product, so we simply throw it out. By doing that, we are not only using our resources irrationally, we are also causing an overproduction of followed by huge industrial pollution. Okay. We'll talk about that in a minute. Let me read your conclusion first. To sum up, get rid of I want to say. I want to say sounds really, really informal. You want to avoid using that, okay? So, to sum up, the question of pollution is really important right now because now the situation is becoming worse every day. Despite the fact that the reasons to that are many, there are several ways to overcome this issue. Okay, we have to clean up the grammar here. All right, we already talked about the first sentence, but despite the fact that no comma here after fact, despite the fact that the reasons behind this are many, there are several ways to overcome this issue. Okay? So grammatically it's correct. I want to talk to you about your solutions paragraph. Now, I talked to you, I believe, about this a bit, so I think we've covered this paragraph. This paragraph I thought was really, really well written as far as the language goes. You used a ton of nice, cohesive resources. So you kept using this, that. So you said this approach requires, this leads to, by doing that. And this is an excellent example of cohesion. All right. It's really great. You didn't have a lot of these, furthermore, moreover, what is more. You didn't have those. And that was really, really nice. However, there was a major problem with the task achievement portion of this. So remember what this paragraph is supposed to talk about. It's supposed to talk about, look, let's look at it again. What are the reasons for this and how can this be solved? You said one of the most powerful tools is social responsibility. And then you talked about, that we should understand the acts of our consequences. And then I felt like you kind of got off topic. So you then started talking about like buying groceries and then throwing those groceries out, and this just causes more pollution. So I kind of felt that rather than talking about the solution, you were again talking about the problem, because this was really about what happens when we have a lack of social responsibility. And you didn't tell me what happens when we do have social responsibility. Okay, or how this can be aided. So I felt like you started off really, really well, but the development kind of got off track, and it felt like you were talking about problems again. Okay, let's see. So that for me was a problem. Okay, and like I said, it felt like you got off topic and you stopped talking about solutions. The development of social responsibility. Well, how do we develop social responsibility? This is what you really should have answered here, and you didn't. You went in a totally different direction. Okay, and then check this out too. You said that there are many reasons, then you said there are several ways to overcome this problem. You never talked about several ways. You only talked about one, and we've already established that the way that you talked about it really needed some work. So I didn't think it was such a great idea to write several ways to overcome this issue. Okay, you could have just been a little more maybe a little more vague, and you could have said there are ways to overcome this issue, okay? Which certainly fits in, it ties in more with what you said in the previous paragraph, okay? So that's a little bit about this. Like I said, I thought this paragraph was strong in terms of the writing, but in terms of development, it needed work, okay? So let's take a look at this stacked bar chart about the car sales. I don't think it's on the bar chart. I think we say in the bar chart, we can see the distribution of the car sales in thousands with 3 auto manufacturers. You're missing an R there. Ford, Audi, and BMW, 9 European countries in 2018. In most countries, the total number of cars sold is between 200 and 300,000, or is really close to these numbers. In all countries except Belgium, sales of BMW are around 100,000 vehicles. The number of Audis and Fords sold in these 9 European countries in 2018 is fluctuating. Careful with the word fluctuating. There isn't fluctuation here because there's no change over time. What you want to just say is that there is variation. Okay, there is let's see, fluctuation is definitely not the right word. Instead of variation, maybe variation is not the right word either. Let me think about it. You just want to say that there is a wide range of figures for the Audis and Ford sold. Okay. Yeah, I guess you could have said there is considerable variation in the number of sales. I guess that makes sense. Okay. But definitely not fluctuation, which implies that there's change happening over time. Like I said, I have a question mark in my head about variation. I want to double check, but fluctuation is certainly wrong here. Let's see. The most cars were sold in Hungary, nearly 400,000, with a relatively equal share for each brand. France is in second place with a little more than 300,000 cars sold. Germany, Ireland, and Holland are in third, fourth, and fifth place respectively. In UK, only 200,000 cars were sold in 2018. It would be fair to mention that the number of Audis is insignificant. Okay. Despite the fact, you don't put a comma after fact, despite the fact that the number of sold BMWs in Italy is quite high, nearly 100,000, the number of Fords and Audi sold is really low, and overall the amount of sold cars in Italy equals, get rid of 110,000 vehicles approximately. The least cars were sold in Belgium, around 90,000 cars. It is important to mention that that most of the cars are Fords, and the share of Audis and BMWs sold is really small. Okay. Let's talk about your grammar was fine here. We talked about the vocabulary. So let's talk now about task achievement and coherence and cohesion. In terms of task achievement, what this response is missing is an overview. And without an overview, this response cannot get a 6 in task achievement. It will drop automatically to a 5. Okay? Because you don't have an overview. The overview just tells you the main trend, the most obvious thing, and it doesn't include any data. So it could have been something as simple as which country sold the most? Okay. Clearly, Hungary sold the most cars while Belgium sold the least. Okay? That could have been an overview. You could have said maybe that BMW and Ford sold a similar number of cars throughout these countries, but Audis sold the least. Okay? That also could have been a good overview. Like I said, without that information, you will not get a 6 in task achievement. The other thing that I really didn't love was pretty much about coherence and cohesion. I wasn't crazy about the organization of this. You want to try to split up your details into 2 paragraphs. And I think if you had done that, you would have seen how you could have done this really nice and clearly, and well organized. So what I would have done is I would have spent a paragraph talking about those total numbers. Okay, so talking about the total number of cars in Italy, total number of cars in Holland, Belgium, etc. Okay, and then I would have spent my next paragraph talking about the individual car company sales. There are lots of ways to do that. It requires some grouping. Okay, so, you just have to group like things together. So talk about the outliers. So talk about those high numbers, talk about those low numbers, and then talk about those middle numbers, kind of smush them together since a lot of them are similar. That's how I would organize that. Okay. I'd like to see what this looks like rewritten. I think you should have an understanding approximately of where this is in terms of score based on my comments. If you have any other questions about it, please let me know. All right, and I'll be waiting for your next set of essays, so good luck.